welcome back to part 2 of this episode of International Immersion, where we will carry on this conversation and delve even deeper again.
Going on from food, another thing is that's important, we kind of touched on this a bit, is the professors you have.
Yeah, I loved all my... better yet said, I didn't love all of my professors. that would be such a false statement. The professors that I respected the most are the ones that made me actually work the hardest. I had this networking engineer professor who put me through hell. He literally forced us to learn how basically the internet works. And I think, and because now I know how to do my job so much. So it's so those type of professors that kind of challenge you on a purpose. They're pretty strict. Do you guys have any good relationships that drove you with your professors?
Oh yeah, most definitely. I had several in the U.S. during undergrad, and I had a couple that I met in China that really helped me. But I would say more in the States, but I had a couple in China that really helped me off and on.
I don't remember my college professors.
Really?
Cannot remember anyone. There's a professor. I think she taught English. Because it was in the first and second year when we were all required to take English course. And she was making everyone sleeping in class.
And there are a lot of those classes, but there are even classes that are interesting. But that first morning class, and then it may just be
that was in the morning, 8:30 a.m.
Oh
yeah.
Is there any teaching pattern that they taught over in China versus here that you liked more or less?
It's kind of hard to say. It really depends on the type of class you're taking, because my master's is in international relations, so we touched on history, politics, economics, security, and kind of the four big areas, and theory of course. But I would say that, as I mentioned a little earlier, I had one professor from the U.S., one from Japan, and then had Chinese professors, and each one kind of had their own style. The Japanese professor, the one you had, very regimented and very by the book. The Chinese one's similar, more lecture, and then American was much more kind of a mix of lecture, discussion, and kind of follow up. And also, I found that our American professor, he was actually much more active in engaging students before and after class, whereas the other professors, they would come in and go. So I find that, and the same with the American professors here, they are much more willing to engage students one-on-one, even talk to them on the phone, or get together with a bunch of them out of hours to help them out.
I remember that we were talking to somebody, and they made a comment that kind of struck me a little bit hard. They said that their home, right? Their home in home countries, professors, the classes were harder, but they didn't learn as much. Although the classes were easier here, they learned more than they would have at home. Do you guys think kind of get that vibe of foreign being harder? Yes, but maybe not as applicable, right? More theory, not application.
What do you mean by harder? The class is hard. It's
I have heard that, especially from some European students as well, and Chinese students as well, that the classes here are more demanding. They may not be harder in terms of content, but there's much more discussion. It's not just lecture and test, final exam. It's lecture, tests, discussion, projects,
papers.
Yes. Yeah, and I would say that the American method is way.
I'm taking this course with a bunch of undergraduate. It's a kind of mixed course. So I have to take the exams. It's 4 exams altogether for one semester, and also a final paper for graduate students. And I think it's pretty demanding because every class in every class period he would introduce a theory, a new theory, a media theory, or critical theory, and there's a bunch of theories, a lot of theories you have to remember, you have to know, and then you have to give like your own examples. So sometimes, in exams, he asks us to write examples to explain his theory, and the examples should not be from class. You have to come up with new examples in your mind. So I think that's pretty demanding in this sense because you have to apply this theory to your own life.
Yeah, I think you make a very good point there, Scarlett. I think the American method, they will teach you something, but then they make sure you learn how to use it in your own way.
Yeah.
And I think that, going back to the harder, less hard, I think the classes here are more demanding. There's more you have to do, and there's more critical thinking. It depends, of course, the subject you're learning, but I think that some of the elective courses in China I took were more just lecture, test, paper, that's it. Others were more like the classes here, so you kind of got both. But the classes here, they're also like that, but I think that there's much more emphasis here on really ensuring the student not only knows it, but can use it. Yeah. And also can not just doesn't just know the theory or the methodology, but can create their own from it and implement it. And that's one thing I've noticed. A lot of Chinese students I met, they knew the stuff, but they couldn't create it in their own way. Whereas a lot of American students, they may not have learned as much of the information, but they can still implement it very ambidextrously.
Yes, but I'm still having this question because for undergraduate or graduate level, what they can understand about a theory is pretty superficial. I mean, you just understand a general understanding, and you don't really have all this time to dig really deep into the theory. You don't have time to read all the books in the original books by the author. So I think it's okay when you want to try to apply the theory to a real life phenomenon, but sometimes it takes. It's not very possible that you can implement every theory.
For sure.
That's my question.
Sure.
I'm not questioning about the method, but I'm thinking, if you remember all the theory, and it still takes time for you to understand truly.
Yeah, and not every student's going to be able to take away as much, collectively. It's going to be very different based on the student, and it also depends if it's what they like or they don't like. So, yes. But I think that the purpose is that, and I think that's something that
I'm sure they're leading it to
exactly
to a right good direction.
And I think by the end of an undergrad or grad program, that's the goal, is to get a student to be able to have that ability.
Yes.
And forget whatever they're studying. So, yeah. So that's kind of So I'd say professors. That's kind of summarizes that to the extent of kind of just more on a very basic note. And then of course, you're in college, you have professors, and of course you got to have friends. So I think this is pretty general, but I think it's interesting if we kind of can share the way you make friends and how those friends interact with you and around you.
Did you go to like student communities, associations in China?
Yeah, there were. Yeah. They have those. Just like I'd say, there's really wasn't much difference in both universities from here or in China. They have student organizations, clubs, etc. Mm-hmm. But maybe what they can and can't do, or how much they do, can vary.
Yeah. Like I was part of one of those organizations, and it was a nice thing to do. Pretty much, all we did was like one event a semester, and then that's usually how we got together. Funny enough, where we made most of our friends was in the computer lab. We were all hacking at our code, and then we were all like, "Hey, did you get this function going?" It's like, no, I got this issue. So like that camaraderie of like trying to solve a critical problem was actually how I got some of my best friends to this day after college. I don't know if you guys kind of got that same experience, like in those like senior projects, or like those like when you're doing those core. That's usually.
I would say that my undergrad in the U.S. and my grad in China, I would say there was much more emphasis on group work in the U.S., whereas China is more independent. We did a few things as groups, but not as much. I mean, a couple of the group projects were very big in my grad, but there were more emphasis on group projects while I was in my undergrad.
I think from my experience, I think college life is more like a very perfect time for you to date. But besides that, I don't think I made any real friends from college because they're more like concentrated on themselves. They just want to do. They don't really that outgoing and want to make friends with you. It's not like that, but it's a perfect place for you to meet people.
No. Yeah, I definitely concur with you. I think that American students from undergrad, they were much more willing to, reach out, build relationships, create new things. Of course, anyone can take this with a grain of salt, but at least like the friends I made, people I was with, they were just very interested. Even if they didn't do it, they had the interest in doing it. A lot of the Chinese around me, when I was at my master's, they were just very focused on getting their stuff done. And a lot of it was they didn't have time. They were always busy. Whereas American students, they're busy, but not like Chinese students.
No, in the American system, I mean, we were able to get more friends, and I guess I don't know the definition of your friends can vary. Like friends to me is just like. Could be colleagues, right?
Acquaintances,
they're not over cooking barbecue with me, right? Like it's more like we talk shop and we're done. But I do agree, man. Dating in college was so much easier than in the real world.
Yes,
it's like your social life has just been dead for 5 years, and now you gotta actually like get to know people.
Yeah, I would definitely say that dating in college is a lot easier, and because you're surrounded by so many people that are around your age, so naturally it's much easier just to meet people. But I would say that even though it's different, I did make one of my best friends in China. You always can find that person who is very similar to you or has some very similar ideas that you can really just connect with, and you can do stuff together. So it may be hard, but you can always find those people regardless.
Yeah, dude.
But I'd also say that I would say that friends here, they're just much more in the U.S. during my undergrad, more just very talkative and this and that. Whereas the friends I made in China, they were much more shy. A lot of times they were, my English is not good enough. I'm like, who cares? My Chinese sucks, so who cares? Yeah. But I found that as they got to know you more, they really did open up, and they actually were like, wow, I think a lot of times some of my really close Chinese friends, both male and female. Eventually, after they got to know me, they really came to me and talked to me a lot of personal things, and I was really perplexed. Like, why are you asking all this? And they'd be like, "Well, I don't think you'll judge me as much." And I was like, and at first I'm kind of like, "What?"
You're from a different culture.
Yeah, and at first I was a little shocked by it, but I got used to it, even though it was still kind of weird. But I just couldn't get over it that they want to come to me over some of their friends they'd known a lot longer. But that. And I'm not saying this is always the case, but I would say that for some of them, that was quite interesting.
It's just you, Sean, man. You got that face that
we
can bear our darkest secret to you.
No. I just think the main thing is that you can demonstrate to someone, I'm not going to judge you for what you do, who you are, and what you like. I'm just going to be neutral. I think that's really important.
Yeah. I also think for Chinese friends, I have a group of friends from high school. They were my best friends, and we don't really share very intimate stuff. Sometimes you want to build up the best image in your group, in your community. So that's why they prefer to share something with an outsider, but not with a group of friends, because they want to have their best image. That's what you see on WeChat moments. They only post beautiful pictures there.
And I'm sure I think in many of them because they want.
You're not the one to judge them, and you will never tell, and no one cares about your opinion. So yeah.
And I think one big concept that I got to know of is responsible for this mianzi.
Right.
Face.
Right.
That's something that in the U.S. you have this, but in China it's so much more. And it was quite surprising, and but yeah, I think that
especially with your close connections and close people, you always want to have mianzi. You always want to have the best image.
Yeah, and I think with me and my good American friends, it's that doesn't apply to us. We don't really care.
You know, if it's like,
But do you share stuff with your friends?
oh yeah,
Oh, yeah.
well yeah, like I think I think it depends on how far you go with that, of course.
Yeah.
But I will say that I think most Americans who are really good friends, they're very comfortable sharing a lot of intimate details. Maybe not too much, but a lot of basic and maybe even more in-depth things. But and compared to a lot of Chinese friends, as you're saying, I definitely agree with you on that. But they're much more worried about how they look versus what they actually know.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like it might be the reverse, like because like yes, we do have the tiers where I have acquaintance, friends, best friends type of thing, but we actually as higher you go in the tier, like my best friends, like they know way too much about my life.
Yeah, right.
So and it's good and it's bad. So, but like I would like, but I got the men's when it's like work acquaintances or just friends that I'm just trying to like get to know better.
Yeah, I think it's in the U.S. it's more at work professionally. You definitely have men's. Your personal life, friends, it's there, but it's much more lax, or it can vary. Whereas in China, I think it's almost everywhere.
I mean, it's like a mixture of your professional life and your personal life in China, because a lot of professional, your foundation is basically based on your personal life. It's like you get 关系, you get relations with people, and then all this 关系relation will help you to go to a higher level in your job.
That's one thing I've learned over there is just, 关系 relations are so important, and they're important here, but it's not like, it's really hard to describe. It's just the intensity of it is much
a lot
more.
Of human connections is from your schools, from college, from high school. So, means is always important.
Your
image is always very important.
Yeah. So, and I think that's one thing that a lot of Chinese when they come here, they're really shocked by is that, no, we don't care about that, or who cares? And they're like, what? Some of my friends, they've come here to visit, and my one friend came here, and he spent 2 weeks here, and he was blown away by a lot of things. He really enjoyed it, but he really said, wow, I just feel more relaxed.
Yeah. Right.
Which, take it for what it is, but that was interesting to see kind of, of course, we could go into this so much more, but we'd be here forever.
Yeah, that's a whole chapter right there.
Yeah. And I would say kind of the last two things we want to talk about, we can kind of blend, is kind of like the campus environment and outside activities around campus. And, campus is campus wherever you go. It's going to be the same basic thing. But I would say that from my experience, my undergrad university was in a small town. My grad program was in the largest city of Zhejiang Province, Hangzhou. So, huge difference.
Yeah.
They both were very large campuses, but the undergrad is like, you leave campus to just woodlands and small town, whereas in Hangzhou, campus, big city just next to you.
Yeah, I think that's just well, it's a sad thing, but I mean at the same time it's kind of whatever, because our campus was big, like it's actually
second largest in the U.S.
Yeah. So, but
I think.
No, but it was in the top 5. But when you think about it, like, well, once you're out of campus, like, there's not much to do. You gotta drive.
There's no entertainment.
No.
There's no public transport. And it's like,
I think that's the case with most
campus,
U.S. schools in the U.S. in general.
Off campus, I have to wait and because I have to go ride a bus, so I have to schedule and get ready for the bus. So you need to have a car if you live in the United States, right? But if you live in China, in major cities, that would not be a problem.
I completely agree.
You just go out and you get anywhere you want to go.
I will say that nothing beats having a vehicle in terms of how quickly you can do things. But yeah, when I was in Hangzhou, there were buses that went everywhere.
Taxis everywhere.
Yeah,
Subway, buses.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, sadly that's just like the Americans
love their cars.
Yeah, like it kind of sucks. I mean, when you get to like cities like New York, actually has a pretty good subway that you can go around.
Chicago too, downtown,
and Seattle even. But like kind of like rural areas like this, especially like this, they don't. And
it's understandable because there's not the population to drive that.
Yeah,
but at the same time, if you're going to come here to study, you don't have a car, you don't have a license, because I don't have it. I mean, I could have gotten a license in China. I would just have taken a test, but it was impractical because I couldn't have gotten vehicles. They're so expensive, and I wasn't there long enough to really utilize it effectively. But yeah, if you're coming to the U.S., And you're like, okay, I have to use a bus. Sometimes there are no buses.
Yeah.
Luckily, in this area, we do have at least one county transit system.
Yes.
Yeah.
But you really need to rely on your friends who live there, who have cars.
Yeah, car is kind of important, at least in this area. But I mean that kind of changes the experience, right? Like as a student, I think it's your wild years, right? You actually are able to do crazy things with some repercussion, but not that many repercussions.
Yeah. There's a fine line there.
Yeah, so like, I mean, it was just more strict over here. Like when you think about like larger cities, you could just go like bar hopping and stuff more easy.
Yeah, that's the thing is that I've noticed, and I'm sure Charlotte, you can completely agree with me on this, is that in the U.S., a lot of college kids, when they're off, they really can have a good time partying to varying extents. Chinese students, they don't do that nearly as much. They just they wake up, they go to class, they study, they eat, they go to bed, and occasionally they do stuff.
I'm sorry, party is a foreign concept to us.
Okay, so maybe I wasn't being, I didn't give it enough.
Now they love parties. I think they just because they're influenced by this Western culture. But party is not like what you think in China. It's when we think about party, I think most people will think about a reunion with friends or with family members, or it's not like having beers and dancing around. But they do that a lot in China nowadays because of this Western influence. But yeah.
Yeah, I was saying my one buddy from China who I met, I brought him here to visit, and I took him to some of my friends were still in undergrads at the time. I took him to a college party, and I think it changed his life. Not in a bad way, but he was really shocked. He came there scared, terrified, and he left really happy. Not happy he's like drunk or anything, but he really had a good time. Initially he was like, "Oh my god, what's going on?" Fast forward a couple hours, this is a lot of fun because he said people are so nice. You can talk about anything. We're having a good time, and I'm just like, well, okay.
But one thing is that students in college in the United States are not allowed to drink, right?
Well, they can, but not until you're 21.
Yeah.
And many times, maybe the residence halls or certain places, they have limits on what you can and cannot do. And also, you can't have people who are of drinking age and not drinking age in a party together. That could be a huge problem.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, this rule is broken all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And it's almost impossible to enforce. But
It's impossible.
yeah, it is impossible to enforce. I mean, people get caught all the time, but you can't catch them all, and it's just it's almost part of the culture,
Yeah.
the college culture here.
Yeah. I mean, campuses come up with crazy things like, basically, ours is technically a no alcohol zone.
That's completely untrue for every campus in the United States.
I mean,
I know, no, that's the memo, but
the memo is
there's what's stated and there's what's reality.
And even when you get caught, like I think most of the times it's just like a slap on the wrist type of thing, and then they force
exactly.
I had a buddy who brought in a case of beer, and they actually forced them to open every can and pour it in front of the cops. So like.
Yeah, I think a lot of times cops, especially if you're not drunk, if you're there underage but you're not drinking, they're just like, yeah, hey, you could have gotten a lot of trouble, get out of here.
Yeah.
But or it's more of a lesson.
Yeah.
If you're not like drunk driving, if you're just there and you're not causing any problems, they just catch you. It's more like, we're gonna scare you, don't do it again. But then again, it really depends on the cops and where you're at.
So maybe it's not as maybe it might be a little bit different.
I don't think it's even really an issue in China. I never even encountered any of this.
That's not an issue in China.
Oh man.
Yeah. I mean, because almost all the parties I went with
don't know if there's an age. Is there age?
That's a good question because I never
know.
have actually seen like a written age of drinking in China. I mean,
Really?
I imagine maybe it's around 18.
I think they have. But
But yeah, I've never actually seen a specific age because you go to any bar here, you can say no one under
18.
no one born after this year can drink.
Yeah, I think the age is 18.
Like Europe.
It's more like like 18.
Makes sense. Yeah. So that's I guess life in college, both in U.S. and in China. thank you for listening to another episode of International Immersion. As again, we end our tradition by saying goodbye in the languages that everybody speaks. So I'll start it off. Goodbye.
再见。
再见。
Adios. See you next time.